Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or creep or drip or crash. Be water, my friend.
A legend born in Chinatown, San Francisco on November 27, 1940. Bruce Lee has changed the way martial arts have been perceived throughout history. His excellence and philosophy made him unique in comparison to other martial artists. Bruce and his parents, Lee Hun-chun and Grace Ho, moved back to China when he was only 3 months old, where he first began his acting career as a stand-in for an American boy in Golden Gate Girl. He continued his acting career as he starred in about 20 films as a kid, also taking up dance, and won the Hong Kong Cha-Cha competition. Although things were looking up for the young boy, British students began to bully Bruce, which began the start of his martial arts career. His dad decided that it would be a good idea for Bruce to begin Kung Fu for defensive purposes. He was taught by the great master Yip Man. At the end of the 1950s, Lee and his family moved back to the US to live with friends outside of Seattle, Washington. After high school, Lee enrolled at the University of Washington, taking philosophy as his major. He also got a job teaching Wing Chun style of martial arts that he had learned in Hong Kong. Through his teaching, he met his future wife, Linda Emery. By their marriage, Lee had already opened his own martial arts school, where he had later developed his own style, Jeet Kune Do, or the Way of the Intercepting Fist. The young couple expanded their family, having 2 children, Brandon and Shannon. Lee's first major role was a character named Kato in The Green Hornet. After the abrupt ending to the series, Bruce moved back to Hong Kong with his son in hope of achieving more fame. Unknown to him, the Chinese people in Hong Kong were already aware of his acting and martial arts skills. Lee eventually signed a contract with Golden Harvest Production and soon started to film the low-budget film, The Big Boss.
Bruce Lee faces a real dilemma. He's on the verge of stardom in the United States with a projected TV series on the horizon, but he's just achieved superstardom as a film actor here in Hong Kong. So what does he choose, the East or the West? It's the kind of problem most budding movie actors would welcome.
The movie pulled in $3.5 million in only the 3 weeks of its release, causing a catapult in Lee's future. He merely became an overnight star. Bruce's second movie, named Fist of Fury, made him a megastar in Hong Kong. He became unable to walk the streets because of the fear of being mobbed by hordes of fans. The Way of the Dragon was shot with popular martial artist Chuck Norris and smashed the American box office on its release. Law enforcement had to reroute traffic from its screening.
And then I think for the Chinese people, he had a huge influence on a lot of the, how they were kind of, he was their voice. They felt oppressed by the Japanese at that time, or they had in the past, I'm sorry. And so there was a lot of anger and a lot of stuff, and Bruce Lee kind of personified that. So I think he means different things to different people, but definitely a powerful figure.
Before the 1970s, Western perception of the Orient was communism and cheap products. Then came Bruce Lee, the very first Asian superstar. His incredible skill and understanding of Chinese martial arts made his debut in many different movie roles. The Western world saw a change in the movie industry. Never was an Asian actor made a lead role in Western movies. Bruce Lee's influence would lead onto a global acceptance of Asian culture into entertainment and society.
Well, how can you play in Mandarin movies if you don't even speak Mandarin? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I speak only Cantonese.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is quite a difference as far as pronunciation and things like that go.
Western stereotypes of Asians were often negative before Bruce Lee's fame. Many points in history dealt with the Chinese being the bad guy in history. Bruce Lee gave more positive influence to the perception upon Asian men. Even his physical appearance gave, in a sense, a more masculine view upon Asian men. He resolved the deficiencies that America saw whenever an Asian man was involved. Taki Kimura, one of Lee's close friends, stated that grabbing his forearm was like getting hold of a baseball bat. Bruce knew how to scream and challenge those who did him wrong. Even from his 2-finger push-ups or his famous 1-inch punch, he was only 5'7" and 135 pounds. To Eastern and Western society, he was a human model of economy and efficiency with a bit of Oriental background. Lee's style of Jeet Kune Do recreated how martial arts would come to be. No one had ever combined different elements of various styles.
Martial art include all the combative arts like karate or
Judo.
karate, judo, Chinese kung fu or Chinese boxing, whatever you call it. All those. You see, like Aikido, Korean, I can go on and on and on. But it's a combative form of fighting.
Bruce combined Wing Chun, Kung Fu, Thai boxing, and Japanese karate to create his way of the intercepting fist.
To him, he was different than everyone else that was training back in the day. He was ahead of his time, I guess you could say.
The main principles of Jeet Kune Do were simplicity, directness, and a form of no form. Bruce Lee wanted Jeet Kune Do to be flowing in comparison to other martial arts, who were based on stances and forms. Lee's ideology of this new art was to condition one's mind and body to respond automatically to any given attack without the reliance of certain patterns. Lee could easily explode a 100-pound bag with a simple sidekick. Bruce Lee stated in one of his essays, "Size is never a true indication of muscular power and efficiency. The smaller man usually makes up for the imbalance of power by his greater agility, flexibility, speed of foot, and nervous action." Time magazine ranked Bruce Lee as one of the top influential people in the 20th century. Bruce's style of fighting has been infused into movies all over the world. For example, Bollywood and other major movie industries began to incorporate Lee's fighting style into their own movie productions. Lee's fame sparked an interest into Chinese culture, food, language, clothing, and history through his movies. Bruce Lee has been seen as a symbol of courage due to his interpretations in his movies as a defender of justice. The introduction of martial arts into pop culture made it stand out to a larger audience than ever before, even bringing it into the Olympics. His presence thrilled the population of disadvantaged people all over the world. Overall, he globalized Chinese culture as well as his ideas into martial arts.
Inspired a lot of people. I mean, people watch his movies and, I want to fight like him, and they're not seeing the bigger picture. I think he was somebody that, like, from Newton to Einstein, that kind of changed how we fundamentally understood the world, and that's a big deal. So I think that was his biggest contribution.
So I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that's just a philosophy that I stand by in training and trying to teach others the way of his training. We don't teach you a whole bunch of material, but we want you to really, it's quality over quantity.
Bruce Lee's death on July 20th, 1973 would spark a new generation of inspired actors, martial artists, philosophers, and athletes.
Bruce Lee has influenced my view on martial arts in a lot of ways. I think what I really took away from Bruce Lee is the ability to change things that are entrenched. The martial arts at that time was very entrenched. In other words, this is how you do things, and you don't ask questions, and this is just the way it's done.
Many actors looked up to Lee's unique influence upon his fighting movies. For example, Jackie Chan starred as an extra in Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon. The famous martial artist and movie star was a simple extra in which Bruce Lee beat up. Legendary boxer Sugar Ray Leonard looked up to Bruce Lee as a kid. In an interview, he stated, "Bruce Lee was one of my idols, mainly because of his mental stability. Admired for his Eastern and Western ideas of philosophy and truthful expressions of himself, Bruce Lee would always be the fist of history."